Hello, everyone. Welcome to Deep Beauty, Experiencing Wonder When the World is on Fire. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center, and so happy to have all of these talented writers here with us this evening. Before we get started, I would like to tell you a couple announcements of other events that we have coming your way. We just released our spring schedule, and this is the second event this week that we have. We have on Thursday, April 8th, another round of superhero comics comedy show headlining Clay Miles. Friday, April 9th is our art salon, which is quarterly. And I know some of you here are participants in our art salon. That will be Friday the 9th at 6:30. And the focus of that art salon is the confluence of art and science, and it's hosted by Lauren Lay. The art salon is for poets, writers, artists, filmmakers, anyone along the creative spectrum to share ideas and share their work. It's also Earth Day in April. So on April 22nd, we have a double header with Fungal Futures, Art and Science, Find Common Ground with artist Jackie Hoisted and biologist Grace Hoisted on Thursday, April 22nd at 6. And then at 8 p.m., we have our featured artist, In Search of Meaning, a visual conversation in the studio with artist Lily Fisher. And we also have a special talk with Smithsonian Folklife curator Jim Deutsch, speaking on expressions of pandemic folklore, case studies from 1918 and 2020. So that will be on Friday the 23rd. So I hope you can join us for that. And then in May 6th, we have artist Neha Misra as our featured artist. Neha's with us today. And she will be presenting Reclaim Your Power to Create and Heal in the studio with contemporary folk artist Neha Misra, Thursday, May 6th, 6 o'clock. So I hope you can join us. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, Montgomery College, and many others. And now let's get to the program. I really love the title of the book, Deep Beauty, Experiencing Wonder When the World is on Fire. It's so applicable to what we've all been through the past year, but also the past few years. It just really resonated with me in so many ways, and I think others may agree. So you're in for a treat of wonderful writing and discussion. There's a collection of 41 essays by established and emerging writers that will lift your spirits and inspire you to explore beauty at a time when the world seems anything but beautiful. The book is published by Woodhull Press, Norwalk, Connecticut. It's available for purchase at woodhullpress.com/deep-beauty. And the website is thedeepbeautybook.com. And I encourage you to follow them on all social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to their newsletter, editors at thedeepbeautybook.com. So hopefully everyone can hear me okay? Okay, so I'll continue. I'd like to introduce the editors, Katie and Rosemary. First off, Katie, as a reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Catherine Lee, who goes by Katie, conducted a prison interview with a teenage inmate convicted of killing his abusive father, learning that the best stories are about relationships, good and bad. Her work has also appeared in the Washington Post. She covered education for a weekly paper in Washington, D.C. and worked for 17 years at the Catholic University of America as a writer, editor, and director of communications. Now a freelance writer and editor, she lives with her husband in DC. They have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Rosemary Winslow is a writer, researcher, and teacher living in Washington, D.C. with her husband, John Winslow, a visual artist. She grew up on a dairy farm in Western New York where the land, climate, trees, fields, and mammals offered both harshness and beauty. Hiking, swimming, gardening, yoga, and volunteering keep her in close touch with land and community. She appears in a new two-part film about Walt Whitman, offering commentary about the American poet, titled In Search of Walt Whitman. The movie is available on YouTube. In early 2018, when Katie and Rosemary were working at Catholic University, they started meeting either at Rosemary's house or Panera Bread in Tenleytown to talk about the concept of deep beauty and what it means in today's turbulent world. Where and how do you find true beauty? Beauty that uplifts and sustains us in a world beset by the challenges of climate change, partisan politics, and racial and economic disparities. Eager to hear from other writers, they sent out a call for essays on the topic. Essays on relationships, the environment, politics, and racial perspectives on beauty poured in. Now, as the country wrestles with the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, and fallout from the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, this collection of 41 essays seems more relevant than ever. So let's get started. We have three wonderful writers, Monica Mische, JoAnne Growney, and Tabitha Nicole Smith, in that order. So I'd like to introduce the first writer, Monica Mische. Her essay is entitled Democracy Run.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be part of this wonderful project and this amazing group of writers. So my essay is titled Democracy Run. I just wanted to point out it has like two meanings. So first, it describes a run that I took around the National Mall a few days before the 2016 presidential election. And secondly, it's a reflection on the run of our American democracy on our collective quest to form like a more perfect union, and how the monuments and memorials reflect that struggle with its visionary ideals, but also its missteps and its blindness and pain. I'm going to start at the bottom of 129, where I've visited the Lincoln Memorial, and then I've gone down to the Potomac River. Today, the water shines a brilliant blue, and two skips slip across its surface. Beyond them, a gull plunge dives into the water, then spirals up and disappears into the horizon. The river seems timeless, but it also seems to inhabit time, to stretch it backward and forward. It's this same river, I reflect, along whose shores George Washington grew up and played and later surveyed the surrounding land, and along whose banks he is buried. It's this river that runs 400 miles from its source in West Virginia through Harper's Ferry, where John Brown held his fateful stand. It's this river that separated the Union from the Confederacy and on whose shores and tributaries battles were fought. It's where, 1 century after the war between the states, Martin Luther King Jr. shared his dream, and it's where 3 months after that, in what would mark the beginning of another decade of great division, President Kennedy was laid to rest directly across the banks from where I am standing. This river will be here 3 days from now. It will be here in 4 years, and also in 8, in 20, in 100. But what will the country be like then that lines its shores? I'm jogging now through West Potomac Park. A softball team is practicing. I hear the crack of a bat and watch the ball climb eastward against the sun. Crossing the field, I follow a stream of visitors to a footpath. Sand-colored boulders rise out of the earth. One by one, we pass between them, running our fingers along the jagged sides. Out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. Ahead stands Dr. King, a towering figure. He remains part of the stone from which he was carved, not trapped in the rock, but strengthened by it, not defined by it, but transforming it. He gazes across the water toward the Jefferson Memorial. Behind King, a long curved wall celebrates his words. Words he'd written in jail, preached from pulpits, and delivered on stages from Los Angeles to Birmingham to New York to Oslo. Words that provoke, that unify, that inspire, that deepen our understanding of human suffering, that convey a vision bigger than one life, bigger than one group, bigger than one nation, that illuminate the long sweep of history and the rightness of time, including an awareness of his own mortality. The night King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was speaking at a rally in Indianapolis. The crowd of mainly African-American listeners had not yet heard the news. Kennedy had to relay the horrible truth. From memory, he quoted Aeschylus. Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. He prayed that as a country, we might find the love and justice that King had devoted his life to, and that, invoking the Greeks, we might tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. 2 months after King's death, Bobby too was killed. He is buried just downstream from here, across the bridge next to his brother. On King's wall, there appears this quotation: "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends." These words reassure, yet we inhabit just one point along the arc. We are blind to the whole. How can we know just how the arc bends or the justice toward which it reaches? I think of Aeschylus and of Lincoln too. Wisdom comes from grace, grace that is grounded in grief. Feeling not just our own pain, but the pain of others, we gain wisdom and can then bend the arc. But we cannot bend it alone. We must bend it together collectively through time, standing on the shoulders of our forebears, understanding their blindness, their insight, their pain, deepening their wisdom, which is our wisdom too, and our progeny must do the same, continuing the arc we're all part of, deepening our vision of the right. And so I think I'll end there. I think we just have a few minutes, so. Okay.
That was great, Monica. Okay. Did we want to have questions or comments after each reader, or should we wait till the very end for the discussion? Katie?
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to wait until the end.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, our next writer, and poet is someone that I know, I've known for many years, and also count her as a friend. I'm also a fan of her work. She's a wonderful poet and all-around person, JoAnne Growney. And her essay is entitled "When I'm Quiet Enough to See." Take it away, JoAnne.
All right. Okay. I had some kind of a decal in front of my face for a while. Thank you all for coming to listen. Before I start to read, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my writing process. For me, it seems as if physical and mental activities are closely connected. My body does some of my thinking. Thinking is shaped especially by my fingers, and sometimes my mind understands things better if I can keep my body still and quiet. I explore some of these mind-body connections in my essay, which has the title, When I'm Quiet Enough to See. The essay opens with an epigraph, some playful words by writer Lewis Carroll from Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, says Alice, whether you can make words mean so many things. And now I will read several of the opening paragraphs of the essay, When I'm Quiet Enough to See. Writing this essay has pulled me into a journey of discovery. One idea has led to another, and my initial view, seeing my awareness of beauty awakening as I grow calm, has grown into a tree with many branches. Because I much enjoy puzzling over ideas and questioning them, my view of beauty is not unlike that of Lewis Carroll's Humpty Dumpty. In my childhood years, beauty was not a common word. Things that I later called beautiful were accepted as simply themselves. My father's wheat fields rippled with the wind. The clouds overhead had shapes that could be built into a story. The blackbirds noisily welcomed the morning. It wasn't until I left our farm for college and later for the city and then returned that I fully saw the beauty of a windswept field or a tree-ripened peach, that I appreciated the delicate sweetness of the peach and the rich taste of the tomato, picked red and ripe and still warm from the vine. One of my poems, entitled Carry a Stone, written in the 50s about my grandmother Anna, who died when I was 17, surprised me when I looked back at its ending. And I'm quoting here, "You are most beautiful before you die." That is the story of my grandmother. Rather often it seems that I need to be absent from beauty for a while to learn to recognize it. Many of my recollections of beauty have come from re-seeing the familiar in a new way. But I also have a few appreciations of sudden beauty, a backyard sky show of flashing meteorites, a sudden view of open canyon in Bryce National Park, after climbing a rough path and edging past a giant rock. The steady march of a gleaming turtle slowly passing my parked bicycle and heading downward toward the stream. Sharp electrification from head to toe, appreciation with a gasp. Sometimes writing is also for me a problem-solving activity. I write for a while, and then as my fingers spell out words, the words shape my thoughts toward new ideas. As I wrote the poem, Carry a Stone, about my grandmother, the words led me to see her beauty. In her case, a beauty of patience and calm. Through hundreds of games together, she taught me to play checkers, and occasionally I would win. She taught me how to work with yeast, to handle dough, to bake bread. 7 years ago, shortly after I became a grandmother, one of my sons was taken to the emergency room with acute pancreatitis. He was for many days near death, for 14 months in the hospital. I sat with him. I became close to his family. I saw beauty in the movements of a skilled nurse, beauty in the rhythms of pain-free breathing, in the beauty in the learning patterns of a 3-year-old granddaughter. When I am able to be still, I see much that is beautiful. Perhaps patience and calm are themselves beauty, and not just for my grandmother. Perhaps beauty is everywhere, and I must slow down to see it. These are notions that my writing here suggests I should consider. Thank you.
Wonderful, JoAnne. Wonderful. And now for our third writer, Tabitha Nicole Smith, with her essay, A Hymn to a Grandmother.
Good sequence.
Good evening. I'm going to start at the midpoint of my essay. I get somewhat emotional. Hopefully I won't, but if I do, I hope you will bear with me. In the 7 years following my grandmother's amputations, I watched her broken spirit heal with the births of many great grandchildren, baby boys and girls continuing her ancestral line. They were able to reach parts of her that we, her adult children and grandchildren, just couldn't reach anymore. Through these babies, her desire to face life reemerged, and she began to live life again. Tapping into the strength that had, prior to her surgery, defined her very being, she smiled again. She laughed again. She had purpose again. And so as I say goodbye to my granny on this day, I do so not with a heart of mourning, but with a heart filled with love. Yes, I celebrate her, the woman who taught me life's most important lessons. I celebrate her, the woman who taught me that the early bird always catches the worm. She woke up early every morning before the sun rose and straightened up. After straightening up, she got dressed and went for her morning walk, exercise that she didn't really need because she was always on the move. Indeed, on most days, she accomplished more by 9 o'clock in the morning than I could in an entire day. She would call me on the phone and say, "Gal, you ain't up yet? It's 9. Don't you know the day is almost over? I done gone for my walk, washed my clothes, cooked breakfast for cousin Ethel, given Killer a bath, cut the grass, and you still in bed." She'd done so much, and the funniest thing about it all is that I knew she always held back some of the details of her morning productivity. She wouldn't tell me everything she'd done. I suppose she knew that she had me beat, and she chose not to rub it in my face. She gave me a pass of sorts, and I celebrate her for this. I celebrate her, the woman who taught me that I must always give. On the eves of so many Thanksgivings and Christmases, she and I stood alone, openly sharing, joyfully creating. We made meals for our family, a family that included blood relatives as well as her neighborhood sons and daughters, those on whom the world had given up. Pat, James Earl, Fish, Charles, Rudy, and so many more. Miss Polly always exercised Christian love and care towards these folks who, because of urban sickness, addiction, crime, poverty, abuse, viewed food as secondary. She'd say, "Tell them to come and get a plate. We can't eat all this food." To her, there was always enough to share. Her kitchen, a place so small, was the heart of a community. Her cooking sustained life, and her gentle acceptance continually drew people to her. She fed their bodies and spirits, and they in turn made sure that nobody bothered Miss Polly. She was loved by all, and I celebrate her for this. I celebrate her, the woman who taught me that I must always create. She introduced me to gardening, the art of growth. On many occasions, I traveled behind her. a woman with a back so strong, following in her footsteps. I knew that I was standing in the shadow of extreme greatness. She would throw her hoe over her right shoulder, and it would become part of her. Mine, on the other hand, was not part of me. I would sort of drag it along behind me like a too long and unwieldy third leg. It was a limb that I had not learned to use. It was cumbersome, and I, as a result, was clumsy. This thing made me feel strangely disoriented. I would whine, "This is too hard. Do you know how hot it is out here?" And she, always standing at my side, would tell me, "Keep moving, it'll get easier." Of course, I didn't want it to get easier. I wanted to tell her that this was her thing, that I wanted to go into the house where it was cool, but I knew better than that. Quieting myself, I put my head down and tried to keep up with her as she made gardening, backbreaking work, look so easy. This was a gift, one of the world's greatest gifts, in fact, and she had received it from God. He put her in this world to love things well, to literally grow and develop things from nothing. And I celebrate her for this. I celebrate her, the woman who taught me the very meaning of the word strength, a strength that she displayed most adeptly in the presence of death. When some family member or friend died, she exhibited a complete absence of emotional fissures, and yet she was humane, loving, kind. For her, there were no teary whys to be answered. She understood that death was a natural part of life and existence. Remaining composed, an unyielding figure of emotional strength and stability, she would quietly and respectfully enter the bedroom of some deceased loved one. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. She breathed air that contained the last breaths of the dead, but she was unafraid. She carefully closed eyes and cleaned soiled bodies and dressed them in quote unquote presentable clothes. She positioned bodies, arms across chests, so that some unknown they would not break them up after rigor mortis. "No use crying and acting like a fool. They're in a better place now," she would proclaim to some hysterical mourner. Upon hearing her boldly astute declaration, I fervently believed that they were in fact in a better place now. And so on this day and forevermore, I know that she too is in a better place, and I celebrate her for being my role model, my hero, my friend, my grandmother.
Wonderful, Tabitha. I totally relate. Loving my own grandmother so deeply. And when did you lose your grandmother?
2007.
Yeah, we're so blessed to have had them. Yeah, so nice, really moving. And I now will open up the discussion for our writers. Our first question is, what does deep beauty mean to you?
I was, whoops, let's see, am I?
We can hear you.
I wasn't one of the readers, but I just wanted to say that I was amazed as the essays started coming in and hearing them again tonight at so many different perceptions of beauty, of deep beauty. Obviously for Tabitha, her grandmother, who sounds like an amazing woman. For JoAnne, the way she works, the way she writes, beauty in small things. For Monica, writing about our democracy. And I think I think that's interesting because there are so many different ways to see beauty. I tend to see beauty through relationships. And I have seen so much of that in the past year. I think we all have. I think relationships have deepened. I think the pandemic, while it's been really difficult, has helped to deepen those relationships. There have been opportunities to help other people. So for me, I think it's beauty through relationships and beauty sometimes through the very small things in relationships, a little gift, a kind word. And it's just been so wonderful to hear from the writers, to meet some of them here tonight for the first time. But that's been my perception of deep beauty.
Great. Thank you, Katie.
Mhm.
Anyone else have any insight into what deep beauty means to you, JoAnne?
Well, one of the things, and this is part of what's in my essay, that beauty is what I'm able to see when I get quiet and can appreciate. I mean, many times something that you might say is beautiful, I'm rushing around too much to notice. But when I'm able to get quiet, take a deep breath, see and hear, then I can find beauty.
Great. Anyone else?
I think for me, beauty is in the lessons you learn, particularly as I think about my grandmother. There was so much that she taught me that I didn't recognize until many years later. Lessons about being strong, lessons about knowing, about living with lack, things that it just seemed like she was being difficult as a child. And then as I get older, I see that that was the way she was building me into something better. So I like to look at that. And I guess it's similar to the comment earlier about the relationships, because there's beauty in relationships. And I think we've all had to embrace those relationships and to come to terms with the fact that relationships have to function differently now that we're in COVID-19 life and living, not being able to see family that you've been accustomed to seeing. So yeah, so I think that's where the beauty lies for me, not in the things, but in the relationships and the people.
Great. Okay. And did writing about deep beauty change your perception of it or prompt you to think more about its role in your life? JoAnne?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that writing the essay reminded me is how my fingers help me think. When I start to write, I have some ideas in my head, but once I start writing, my fingers find new words, new ways of saying things, new insights. And so, I don't know. I mean, I guess I better quit because I don't know that I can say it any differently, but just repeat myself how the body is part of the thinking process.
Right. The creative process itself kind of helps to grow other thoughts and ideas and leads you down different paths. Great. Who else has something to say about how deep beauty changed your perception of it or prompt you to think more about its role in your life? Monica, did you have?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when you write about something, something that's very abstract becomes palpable. And so I definitely had this ritual of running through around the National Mall when I was training with marathons. I knew it was always really meaningful to me, but not until I really took the time to write about it and think about the history, and really felt the past speaking to me and kind of felt a voice guiding me toward the future. I wouldn't have had the depth of that experience had I not actually spent that time writing about it.
Yeah.
I guess I just go back to the previous question about the deep beauty. So I also found the deep beauty in reading this book and reading other people's essays and the stories. So for me, hearing people's voices, hearing people's stories, especially in this time of disconnection, really is a beautiful experience. You know, we can't be with each other physically, but we can through our words. And so just with my fellow readers, Tabitha and JoAnne, in their essays, they did talk about this connection with individuals and this love and the ritual. Like I remember, I think in Tabitha's essay was about the physical connection to the grandmother and the ritual of braiding the hair. And I think in JoAnne's about sitting with your family and watching the thunderstorm and connecting to nature. But it is that connectedness and the taking that time to be with what's important. And so that really resonated with me, and it comes from reading other people's works.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's keep with that, dig deeper into that discussion about, you know, this current time we're in. Where and how have you found deep beauty during the pandemic? Would you like to share, Rosemary? How about you? Our other editor from the book.
Yeah. Well, at first it was a relief not to have to rush around everywhere and be able to get quiet and slow down. So slow down. I'd been going through a lot of this thinking and change for the last 5 years since my husband's health began to decline, and I had to stop working to take care of him. I couldn't do both. And so I was already kept dropping deeper. When you can't control something, you can either keep fighting and go nuts, or you can kind of surrender to what is. You can't stop it. And what I found was every time I did that, I'd relax into this deeper love. And there was this beauty there, and it just kept growing every time I'd fight. And now I don't fight very much anymore. I just let it go there. So it sort of changes you when you get enough practice, I think. So that was really what got me thinking about it, and the use of, there was so much about beauty and the political discourse too. And I wanted to know what people thought beauty was, especially deep beauty, not just a cultural or an individual view of its eye in the eye of the beholder, but the deeper spiritual values, where you go when you drop down because you have to, or you decide to. Suffering, grace, wisdom, Monica said, or JoAnne, you get in the stillness and there's beauty, and Tabitha, it's part of life. These are all things I have read for years and years in spiritual reading by the spiritual masters. So people, you find it yourself, and then the experience is very real, and you can really go with it then, because you know in your body what it is. And so deep beauty to me was dropping down into this zone of giving up, and suddenly things, it's like the bottom dropped out and opened up, and there was this other calm, beautiful, loving, deeper loving existence there. That's what it was for me. So I had Katie and I put together this book on this idea, and it just developed as we brought the essays in, and we really formed the book out of the essays. They were so astonishing. We were just astonished, bowled over by the good writing, the beauty, the wisdom, the diversity of it all. And as we were editing and working with some of the writers to deepen things, as editors do, and have them fit the book, and put together a book that fit together, our own visions expanded and deepened with, and opened up with everybody. So we're all a drop in the ocean, and we all make it the beauty together. It's like a tapestry.
Right.
It's an art of everybody, which is my vision of life too. You make it your own, and you do your part, and you leave other people do their parts, and and then you kind of connect, relating together, and you can't do it all yourself, but you do your part, and you do the best you can, trying to make beauty
Great.
of your life. So and still changing.
Mhm.
The idea is still developing, yeah. And it may never stop, because how do we know in the end what that is?
Right.
Finally, or is it? Yeah, we wanted a book big enough to hold it all, but still coherent. And I guess it's coherent in the relationships, because writing like this is you're writing out your relationship with someone or something, or yourself, or your life, or democracy. That's what it does, as so many people have said. And I've spent 50 years teaching writing, so that idea developed it's been developing since. And you discover it when you're writing as a child too. The teachers may not like it so much. They want you to do a certain kind of writing once you get out of elementary school. But I was lucky to have some teachers there who really encouraged explore yourself and your capacities and imagination.
Great. Oh, someone else have a comment?
I had a thought, unless someone else would like to go.
I'm Joan King. I'm on Ed King's computer. But if I could just say a few words, I would appreciate it. I really didn't think about beauty, I guess, regarding, well, deep beauty regarding relationships. My husband, we will be married 60 years in June. We spent, during the beginning of this pandemic, 4 months together, 4.5 months, in a little 400 square foot apartment with one bathroom. And what happened, by the time we were ready to come back here, now I will admit it was in Hawaii, but we both said our lives had been so wonderful those 4.5 months. We live in a co-housing community, so we have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But for those 4 months, it was just
stillness of the kind.
it
JoAnne
was
talks
the
about.
stillness. It was, and this, thank you all, because I never thought of it in that way. I mean, I knew what we were going through was very profound, really, and beautiful. But I'm so glad that I'm listening to all this and understanding that it was. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's hear from others in the audience as well. Neha, did you have something to share?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. Really beautiful. And I love the tagline. I wanted to say, here's my copy. I wish I could go through and get it signed digitally. Maybe they'll have some time digital travel in future for virtual book signings. I love, what it says about wonder, experiencing wonder when the world is on fire. That is just so beautiful, both quite literally and as a metaphor. I wanted to ask you all about the cover. How did you choose the cover, and how was that process? I see it's like by a waterfall and has an artistic, almost like a brush sweep through. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about the book cover.
My husband, it's a painting of my husband's done several years ago of a scene in Sandwich Notch, New Hampshire, which was much painted by the 19th century painters, areas in New Hampshire and in the mountains. And here's one of his paintings, and that's him, an image he did. And I guess the contract said gave the press, Woodhull Press, the right to choose a painting, but they did want one of John's. There were several cover designs at first, and we didn't like any of them. We looked at what Katie, 3 of his paintings or 2, and had him design more covers, but
Right.
hard to know what it was going to look like on the cover. And when this one came through, that we just all loved it. It just seemed right for the subject. And there's a lot of mystery. There are people, there's spirits, not physical, but much physicality.
Mhm.
Water, stone, plant life, human, air. There's an air bubble with a spirit up there.
It's beautiful.
And the colors are ones that people like to gaze at, those greens and blues. It's why people sit and stare at the Monet water lilies so long. It's those colors are natural colors, I think, and we just drink it in. The green and the blue sky and the green plants of nature. That's what I think. I mean, of course, that's a speculation, but I think so. I don't know. We put the cover designer through a lot of hoops to make moving letters, changing type. Katie is good at that, so she can talk about that if you want to hear more. She was in publishing, so she knows all about type. To me, I wouldn't have known anything, but she decided all that.
Well, I think it's a wonderful cover and title. I just love it. And in our newsletter theme for March is Deep Beauty, inspired by the title of the book too. So, okay, this question is for everyone to dig a little deeper into this discussion. Where and how have you found deep beauty during the pandemic?
Are people just talking?
Sure, you can. Brenda?
Oh, yeah. I think that with the pandemic, I definitely became very reflective as I was here by myself. And I think the most beautiful thing I ever saw was my granddaughter when she was first born, and looking into her eyes and seeing that light of a beautiful soul, which made me think about when my daughter was born, which made me think about my mother, which made me think about my sister, and think about the people who I love and how the love is a feeling, but it's also like a vibration, and it's like a comfort, and it's like a protection, and it's like a soothing. And so I think that comes about, as JoAnne has talked about, in times of quiet, and other people have said that too. And just to have the privilege to love and to be loved, I think for me, that's the essence of deep beauty. And I'm sorry, Ken, I think I saw his hand, but I just wanted to share that.
No, that's okay. Can I go now? Don't want to interrupt anybody. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. never heard the concept of deep beauty before. I would imagine, I would imagine that it probably means different things to everybody. Since COVID, you know, somebody was talking about connections. I'm a music journalist. My main passion is international music. And I've made new connections in a number of different countries. The latest ones were New Zealand, Bulgaria, and Romania. And that's just really wild, you know. And I've attended Zoom meetings based in the UK from an outfit called Campfire Convention, which has larger scale and smaller scale gatherings. They used to be in person. I couldn't get there. Where people discuss their state of the world and how they relate to it. You know, other things that were beautiful that I've noticed in the COVID time, since I'm spending a lot more time, God help me, on Facebook. God, I know, kill me now. And people have posted videos of interactions with animals. And one that really struck me was this diver in the deep ocean somewhere. And there were a group of seals that came up to him. And some of them were acting like they wanted tummy rubs as if they were dogs. And then there was a video clip that was making its way around Facebook of a herd of elephants that came to, I think it was the memorial something for their former human keeper. I mean, that was astounding. I'm looking at notes here. Yeah, international connections. The animal videos on Facebook. Natural scenes. Some artists have done really beautiful paintings inspired by Lord of the Rings. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I was wondering if women may lean more towards this confessional style, this confessional personal style of essay writing than men. I've never done it until recently, and I've certainly never done it professionally. I've mostly written about music. And of course, those who know me will know that I certainly do think that a healthy young cheerleader is absolutely beautiful. I think that covers all the notes I had. I'm gonna have to get a copy of this book. I'm really curious to see what what you all have written, and if there really is a difference between style and perceptions of men and women.
Okay, well, sorry, that is something to ponder, Ken. And there are men writers in the book. You wrote in the chat asking if it was just women, but there are men and women. There's a diversity of writers. So how about others? Who has some ideas on where and how you found beauty during the pandemic?
Tabitha had her hand up.
Tabitha, okay.
I actually wanted to kind of respond to Ken. I am currently enrolled in theological study, and I think I'm a part of a group, a student group there, and I think the person who is most open and emotive and expressive emotionally is a man in the group that I'm in. I think it just comes down to allowing yourself to be vulnerable. In my case, Rosemary was my instructor, and she really pushed me to go places I didn't want to go. I didn't feel comfortable going, but I'm so glad that I went there. Initially, when I wrote my essay, it was completely intended for selfish reasons. I wanted to be able to share my grandmother with my daughter, who did not exist at the time, but I knew that there was no way she'd be able to meet her. So I just needed to put it on page. As I've gone through the experience of being a part of this project, as well as experiencing what life looks like in the midst of COVID, what I'm realizing about beauty is that we have to learn to empathize with others, and we have to learn to suffer with other people. That's something I didn't get before my seminary study. I think that's so important because we all go through things that are similar, and it's good to just know you're not alone, particularly when you are literally alone. So that's been the beauty for me, and knowing that I've experienced some things that other people are going through, and my words actually might help somebody else.
Yeah, I was really moved by your several of you were talked about your grandparents and things like that. Mine, of course, are all gone. I'm 69, but I've never been married. I don't have kids. And one of the paradoxical things that's happened during the COVID period is my international connections are growing, you know, and that's just mind-boggling. You know, I spend more time on this bloody screen talking to people far away in the United States and in other countries than I do with people right in the building here.
Right.
And also, you know, beauty, environment, natural landscapes, we're losing that. And that's, you know, another kind of beauty. I'm very concerned about preservation of the environment.
Right. Well, with technology, we've been able to stay more connected. So that's also a good thing. How about someone else? During this time when the pandemic has limited so many of our activities, has it been easier or more difficult to find beauty?
I could answer.
JoAnne. Oh, and
Okay,
then Dorothy.
Okay, whichever.
JoAnne, go ahead, and then Dorothy.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that the pandemic gave me some time to try new things. I'm not sure whether Twitter is beautiful, but last year, during April, it was National Poetry Month, and there was encouragement from various groups to post poetry on Twitter. And so I experimented a lot with little poems, including a type of poem called the fib. Now, a fib may be truthful, but its syllables are counted by the Fibonacci numbers. So a fib is a 6-line poem where the numbers of syllables are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. So quickly, I will read a coronavirus fib. Don't touch me with your fingers. Use your heart, we must. Keep bodies distant and stay safe. Thank you.
Always enjoy your fibs, JoAnne.
Well,
Your poetry.
The thing about the pandemic is that you had time to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. So
that is true, and it's forced us to slow down.
Hence Twitter.
Wow. Oh, so you're new on Twitter, like?
Well, back then. I've been on now for a while.
Yeah. There are worse things we could do with our time, right? Dorothy, you had something to share.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, for me, I think there's a renewed sort of sense of community and connection, which sounds really weird. You know, I think Ken was saying, you know, we spend most of our time behind a screen, but I think there's a different type of connection. And, you know, I think it was just alluded to, right? Like, we don't think of Twitter as deep connection. It's definitely sort of, in some ways, the antithesis of deep connection, right? It's a very short connection. But I think you can think about depth on an individual, like depth of one particular relationship, but you can think of depth also as reach. And, you know, there are all these individuals that are my life would never have connected with had I not been in the midst of this. And so one of the volunteer things I did was with an organization called Get Us PPE, which had to do with getting, you know, personal protective equipment, masks and the like to individuals that needed it. In my day job, I do stuff with the maker community, so people that are sewing masks or 3D printing different types of personal protective equipment. And through that work, my reach was like global, and I met people in different countries that needed help. And I just think about the beauty of like the human experience and how we're all connected. And sometimes it's really easy to forget that, right? Because we're all doing our own little thing and we're in our own individual world. And it took like this pandemic that we're all going through, right, for us to see the human condition and realize we're all the same and we're all kind of going through stuff. And to think about sort of the depth of the reach of like my actual connections. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing I had put in the chat was about just my mom and just my own deep depth, like true depth with my own mom, who for most of my life I've had very short conversations with. Obviously she's my mom and we talk. We never really talked at length, and there was so much about her I didn't really know. And then I started going on daily walks to kind of actually get sort of physical beauty from the world around me, and just also to get my hips to not hurt when I was sitting so long. And then in looking for that and just saying, oh, let's FaceTime so she could get some exercise and talk, I learned all these beautiful histories about my family and just her relationships. And it just again was like a gift. And when I first started out, I was like, this really sucks, my hips hurt, and I hate the fact that we're stuck in here. I'm a hugger, I can't hug anybody, it's really horrible. But I think there is like both depth of individual relationships and then reach, which is a different type of depth. And thank you for providing the opportunity for us to share.
Hey, well, thank you, Dorothy. That's great. I could totally relate to all that you said. I also have had, even though I haven't been able to see all my family in California, I've had other connections with other relatives I wouldn't normally talk to. Like I have a teenage cousin that I never communicated with before, but she knows that I knew a lot of the great grandparents, growing up, and her great grandparents. And so she's been after me, and she wants us all to get Italian citizenship now, and so pestering me about that. But it's been fun, it's been fun talking with her and connecting. And I see Neha has her hand raised. Neha, what?
I know Katie wanted to go first. Katie, you can go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when Rosemary and I were working on the book, we looked at the concept of beauty or the interpretation of beauty in our society. And we were hearing about the beautiful wall on our border and beautiful letters from the North Korean dictator. And those are all very superficial interpretations of beauty. And what we're hearing tonight is deep beauty. This is deep beauty. This is real beauty, beauty of relationships, the things that Dorothy talked about. This is beauty that sustains us, that inspires us and sustains us. So just wanted to mention that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can go. I just wanted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, what JoAnne was saying about Twitter and Dorothy, what you shared about deep connections. Also, one, JoAnne, I wanted to say how accountability is beautiful, deeply beautiful. So the Twitter has been more beautiful after certain actions were taken to make people accountable for vitriol and for causing literally violence and death. And that relates to my second point. As an artist, and also I'm a intersectional climate justice advocate, and I feel beauty not just as a noun, but beauty as a verb. Justice is beautiful, to fight for justice. And last year we have seen so many multiple reckonings, which are not new, but like them all colliding in terms of health, the racial reckoning, the climate crisis. So I also feel there's so many dimensions to beauty as a noun, as a feeling, but also as a verb, because to stand for justice and in solidarity with justice, I feel is one of the most beautiful, deeply beautiful things in life.
Great. Thanks so much, Neha. Do you think the pursuit of deep beauty has taken on a particular significance this past year? Who would like to share? I saw Tabitha, did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the midst of coaching my 10-year-old through walk.
Oh, okay, no problem. So has beauty taken on a significance this past year? Brenda, I see you unmuting.
Yes. I just wanted to say that everything is now, and I am more deeply aware of that than ever. And I told you about the loss I suffered at the beginning of the year, about the love of my life suffered a fatal stroke. Last year, I lost 2 of the elders in my family. They weren't COVID related, but they both passed away last year. And, it's just the immediacy of our existence and how fragile it is, just really came to bear last year to me, now more than ever. And so I just recognize we live our lives in these beautiful moments, and we actually really live from moment to moment, whether we make long range plans or short range plans. There's no guarantee for that. And I think that not in a fearful sense, but really in a sense that makes me more to celebrate these moments that we have. And I appreciate them, so much. And thank you for the condolences. But I have wonderful memories, 20 years of memories to think about and reflect on. So I appreciate that as well. But I think that is it puts so much meaning into every day, maybe ordinary, extraordinary, I'll say.
Thank you, Brenda. And I want to ask you this question as well, because you are a poet, and to all the writers. How has your writing sustained you this past year?
I live to write, so it's funny because while this program was going on, I did write something very short, and it's it's not. I mean, it's a poem, it's a poem, but it's not really like done or anything. I just, how it is when writers know when something comes, you have to get it out. But I just wrote this while this program was going on. I shall die a poet. The grass shall be my soft bed's final resting place. I have taken all the beauty and despair I could find in memories, old cars and empty cans. I am a whistler, sometimes humming softly under my breath as I felt the winds, sometimes strong but mostly soft, follow me down the road of life. I have been a keeper of great and terrible secrets, sharing things that no one saw before because only I have my own perspective. I am an unquiet original. I protested mostly through life, threw up my hands and yielded to the plight of my destiny. I was very small, but I was given such a large and beautiful life when God designed herself as me. And when I see enough of it all, I will walk back to the resting to live ever on.
Wow, beautiful, Brenda. That's awesome. And she just did that like over the last few minutes sitting here. Brenda's just so awesome. So please join us when Brenda hosts some of our poetry gatherings. So the next one will be during Silver Spring Blues Week June 14th through 19th. Okay, how about others? How has your writing sustained you this past year? Who would like to share? Other writers here, whether they were the readers tonight or other writers. Okay, Ken?
Yeah. I haven't done, most of my writing now is on my Facebook page, which has become kind of a personal blog in a way. Most of it's about music. And, the international music has definitely been, it's my main passion, and I love making the connections. And that has probably sustained me over the past year or so. But I am also learning how, in fits and starts, how to express myself about, I'm not sure exactly what to call this, the political and environmental situation, other than just saying, oh, Trump is an asshole and capitalism is evil. But what is exactly wrong about those things? Not just to call, not just to do name calling and make simplistic statements. I don't use the word climate change. I use ever accelerating destruction of the environment / biosphere. Not as catchy, it's a little longer, but it expresses it better. And I have gotten a lot of comfort out of watching these video clips with animals on Facebook.
Yes, me too. I'll share a love of animals, I think. Well, great. Who else would like to share how their writing has sustained them during this past year? Neha, like Brenda, they're both on our board of directors for Silver Spring Town Center. Neha's also a poet, wonderful poet and artist. So Neha, how has your writing sustained you? I know the art has sustained you also.
Yeah, I think like Brenda was saying, I really relate to that. I write because I breathe. There is writing on paper napkins, on phone. It's like everywhere. And I feel, it has definitely helped both cope and with meaning making, with connection. I feel, because for me, poetry itself, it is almost a bridge between the physical and metaphysical. Also related to what Tabitha was sharing earlier. So yeah, it's just been, I've written a lot. At the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote this poem, a call to humanity in the times of COVID-19, which drew from lots what was happening in social media. And like some people were saying, oh, it's so great that Earth is thriving, while at the same time, people are also dying, and people who are dying more are people who are more vulnerable in societies around the world. People of privilege everywhere are more protected. That's how it works. And how it is, like, as an immigrant, I feel the country which claims to be the greatest country on earth with the largest army and defense expenditure, this happens and we cannot respond like adequately and in time. So also so much I feel both the rage and the anxiety, and hope for the future, because some people are hoping to go back to a normal which was not normal for most people. So really for me, my like writing and like all creative practices have been how to channel that. And I have really loved, Lisa, I'm so grateful to you and SSTCI to connect with so many human beings in this lockdown time, not just in our area, but I feel I've taken more classes in this last year than I have in last 10 years. because things are more accessible. So I've also taken writing classes, which has been really, really amazing. And I really appreciate, the book, which JoAnne, who is a dear neighbor, she mentioned about, and I got my copy. And also it's like, I feel for me, my North Star in life itself is that beauty is a verb. So to have this, it is, I feel it's like a sacred text, everybody should have it. It's so wonderful. So I really appreciate all of you. It's truly the sacred work. So thank you so much.
It is a sacred text, and your words remind us like our better times ahead. In the foreword of the book, A Deep Beauty, best-selling author Thomas More writes, dark times breed fresh vitality. So I ask everyone, do you see better times ahead for our world? Dorothy.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I, am hopeful about, a little nervous to see whether it actually happens, is how many of the behaviors, things that we just even articulated in this call around, the deep beauty and the new connections and the deeper connections that we've had will persist. And I remain hopeful that they will. But it's one of those things where I really hope we don't go back to being completely the way we were, where we didn't care as much about other people and maybe, weren't looking out for our neighbors as much and, weren't talking to our family members as much, and that there'll be an opportunity for us to continue, even though we're all like super Zoom fatigued, like maybe we still will have a few Zooms with family members and friends that we haven't seen in a long time. And that will take moments to walk and take breaks and maybe think about work different, so that we're balancing everything and being able to kind of appreciate life more. So I am hopeful that we've learned something, but I also, sadly, if you read any history, you're like, oh, humanity, maybe we're not that smart. So I don't, it's hard to know, but I hope every day that we will remember this. And I'm trying myself to try to create habits that won't be able to be broken so easily when things go back to like normal.
You're right. I know personally, it's forced me to slow down. I'm, walking daily, almost daily, maybe 6 times a week now because of the weather, depending on the weather. But also I think we have a whole new paradigm, our whole concept of work and how we connect with others. We're going to use technology more, maybe go back to a kind of hybrid for SSTCI anyway. We'll still do some in-person events, but I think we're going to do, continue this type of connection virtually so that we can involve more people. Who else would like to share their thoughts on better times ahead for the world? Ann Hughes, how about you? Did you have anything to say on that?
Actually, I wrote a few words down that some people mentioned. And I think if we can all continue to do some of the kind of tough work or the hard work that we have during this time, during the pandemic, if we can keep up those practices and disciplines, maybe we could have some hope for the future. Brenda mentioned being reflective during COVID, and I could really relate to that. And Tabitha said something about vulnerability. And I think it's when we reflect, and I'm inserting the word honesty, and we become honest with ourselves and allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to think about the issues that we've all been facing during this time, whether it's isolation or some of the things that are happening culturally, socially, politically. If we're honest with ourselves and we learn from those things, I think we can experience some, what Ken referred to as he mentioned some international connections, but I think as we make ourselves vulnerable and put ourselves in other people's shoes and think the way they do, or take their side, or listen to their perspective, we're going to expand our world, our life, our thoughts, and then we're going to make deeper connections with people, maybe people who aren't like us, or people who are on the other side, or who are just different from who we are. And I think if we can do that, continue to do that kind of work post-COVID, we can, as individuals, maybe it's going to be one person at a time, but if we all commit to that, I think we can have a lot of hope for the future and see some real change.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Anne. Sandra, do you see better times ahead?
Yes, I do, because it's spring, and I think that because it is spring, we'll have longer days, longer times to see the beauty of the trees that are beginning to blossom, to be able to share in a conversation with you tonight, because this is my first visit with you. Tabitha and I have been friends. We are forever friends. I haven't seen her in 8 years, so it was so nice to see her tonight. And it was so nice to listen to everybody talk about what beauty means to them, whether it was a grandmother or whether it was that tomato that I think it was JoAnne talked about, that warm tomato that she bit into when she went back to the farm. I thought all of that was beautiful, and I just thank you all for letting me just come in tonight to see what was going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Any final thoughts from our writers and editors?
I would just like to say, I hope that there are better days ahead. But even as I make that statement, I'm encouraging each one of us to consider the difficulties that so many people are having. The question that was posed earlier was how writing has sustained us during COVID and the pandemic. And my experience with writing has been quite a bit different from what shows up in the text. So I am a contractor for the government. So I do technical writing and editing every day. And so I haven't done a whole lot of creative writing during this moment in time. But I have to say that my writing sustains me because I haven't had the experience of not knowing where my next meal will come from. In the midst of a pandemic, I bought a home, but that's not the reality that so many people have. And so I think that we have to step outside of our own individual experiences and consider that things weren't great for a lot of people before the pandemic. So going back to normalcy might not be ideal for those folks. Perspective is everything. So I would like for it to be better, but I don't know that I want to go back to normal. I want us to go back to a place where we're more concerned about people in a genuine kind of way, and it's not fleeting.
Thank you. Great. So final comment from anyone? Katie? Yeah, Katie, why don't you take it away and we'll wrap.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of circle back to what Anne, who is my sister, by the way, my beautiful younger sister, and Tabitha, and I am optimistic. I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful because of people like you all on this call and young people today who I think are incredible, have a great sense of social justice, and I do believe we can make a better world for everyone. I hope so. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much to our readers, Monica Mische, JoAnne Growney, Tabitha Nicole Smith, and to the editors, Rosemary Winslow and Catherine Katie Lee. So I encourage you to get the book. Deep Beauty, and you can find it at their website at thedeepbeautybook.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again. Take care.
Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you,
very
Lisa.
much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Katie.
Yeah, thanks, JoAnne. Thank you, Monica.